The underestimated predator. The Galactic Federation had always mocked humanity. In the grand halls of diplomacy, Terrans were seen as idealistic dreamers, soft, naive diplomats more concerned with moral debates than raw power. The Kurthish Empire, with its gleaming armadas and iron-fisted rule, dismissed them entirely. But when the Devourers appeared, cosmic horrors that consumed entire stars, the galaxy's arrogance crumbled.
Admiral Nork stood on the shattered bridge of his flagship, eyes wide with disbelief. His mighty fleet, once a symbol of Kurthite dominance, was being reduced to twisted metal and burning carcasses. The Devourers were unstoppable. Ship after ship erupted in violent explosions, the screams of dying crews echoing across the comms before static silenced them forever. Norks slammed his claws against the console, his scales glistening with sweat as his heart pounded like a war drum. "This is Admiral Norks to any ships in range. We need immediate assistance. The Devourers are unstoppable." His voice cracked with desperation. Static answered him, broken only by muffled detonations and alarms. The cowardly Federation races had already fled, abandoning the Kurthe to their fate. Rage burned in his chest. But even that couldn't hide the cold truth. This was the end. All around him, consoles sparked violently as the bridge shook. Crew members were thrown like ragdolls, some impaled on jagged metal, others crushed beneath falling beams. The air reeked of burning flesh and melting plastic. Norks's claws trembled. Was this how his people would die? Screaming into the void as monsters devoured their stars? And then a voice, calm, controlled, and utterly out of place in the chaos.
"Admiral Norks, this is Captain James Dawkins of the Terran battleship Indomitable. We're inbound to your position. ETA 2 minutes. Hold tight."
Norks froze. His mind reeled. Humans here. He almost laughed. What could a handful of Terran ships possibly do against thousands of Devourers? The Terrans, those silver-tongued meddlers always preaching peace, were sending help. Was this bravery or foolishness? Still, Norks wasn't in a position to refuse. Even if their intervention was futile, any distraction was welcome. He barked orders at his battered fleet, directing them to form a defensive perimeter. His crew obeyed without hesitation, knowing this was their last stand. If they were to die, they would die with purpose. On the edge of the battlefield, the Terran ships dropped out of warp. Sleek, predatory, bristling with weapons, they cut through the void like sharks in a sea of minnows. Norks expected them to open fire immediately, but they didn't. Instead, they held position shields glowing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. It was as if they were waiting for what Norks didn't know. Captain Dawkins appeared on the view screen, his face hard and calm. His eyes held no fear, only a cold, unyielding resolve. "Admiral, order your fleet to fall back. We'll end this here and now." Norks's mandibles twitched in irritation. With 5 ships, absurd. Yet in Dawkins's eyes, he saw something terrifying. It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't bravado. It was certainty, the gaze of a predator about to strike. The terrifying shift. The silence that followed Dawkins's command was deafening. Norks's mandibles clicked in irritation as he processed the human's words. 5 ships against thousands. It was madness. Yet something in Dawkins's tone froze the protest in his throat. There was no bravado, no hesitation, only a calm certainty that sent a chill racing down Norks's spine. "Don't be absurd, human," Norks growled, forcing his voice to remain steady. "We should regroup with the rest of the Federation fleet, live to fight another day." But as he said it, he knew the words were hollow. There was no Federation fleet coming. The other races had abandoned them to defend their own borders, leaving the Kurth Empire alone to face annihilation. And now the only reinforcements were Terrans. Dawkins' eyes hardened. "There won't be another day, Admiral. It's just us now. Trust me, that's all we need." Norks felt a flicker of unease. There was something in Dawkins' gaze, a glint of cold, ruthless intent that seemed alien to the Terran's reputation for diplomacy. It was the look of a predator about to strike a hunter savoring the moment before the kill. Against every instinct screaming at him to resist, Norks gave the order all ships fall back, form up at a safe distance. His officers hesitated, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. But Norks' tone brooked no argument. Slowly, the battered remnants of the KRETH fleet disengaged, retreating behind the human ships. The Terran vessels moved forward in unison, aligning themselves between the KREA and the Devourer horde. Their engines thrummed with restrained power, and their shields shimmered with an eerie glow that seemed to warp the space around them. Norks watched his claws gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly the metal creaked. What in the gods' names are they planning? Captain Dawkins, what are you doing? Norks demanded. Ending this, Dawkins replied, his voice calm, almost casual. All ships arm the Nova bomb. Prepare to fire on my mark. Norks' blood ran cold. His mind screamed in denial. Ubofet. He had heard whispers of the Terran's ultimate weapon. Rumors passed in hushed tones across the stars of a device so powerful it could ignite suns and reduce entire systems to ash. Most dismissed it as myth propaganda to keep the lesser races in line. No species would be insane enough to create such a weapon. And yet, here they were. Nova bomb armed and ready, sir, came a Terran officer's voice through Dawkins' comm. Fire. For a moment there was silence. Then light. A blinding white-hot brilliance erupted from the Terran flagship, so intense, Norks instinctively shielded his eyes. Even through his closed lids, the light burned, imprinting afterimages in his vision. The heat that washed over the Kurth ships was suffocating, searing scales and blistering metal. When Norks dared to look again, he saw it, a single missile streaking toward the heart of the Devourer fleet, trailing shimmering energy that bent space and time around it. The Devourers tried to scatter their formations, breaking apart in frantic disarray. Too late. The missile detonated. For a heartbeat, the void itself seemed to ignite. A newborn star blazed in the darkness, a searing sphere of plasma that consumed everything in its path. And then there was nothing. The Devourers were gone, completely. The sleeping monster bares its fangs. A crushing silence followed the blinding detonation. The void where the Devourer fleet had once swarmed was now eerily empty, as if they had never existed. Admiral Norks' breathing came in ragged gasps, his claws digging into the armrests of his battered command chair. Even now, his mind refused to comprehend what his eyes were seeing. Thousands of ships gone. Not destroyed, not disabled, but erased. His crew stared at their consoles in stunned horror faces, pale and eyes wide with disbelief. The data was clear. There were no enemy life signs, no residual signals, nothing but drifting slag and ionized dust. What moments ago had been an unstoppable galactic nightmare had been reduced to cosmic debris in the blink of an eye. Impossible. Norks murmured, his voice hoarse. No weapon could, but one had. The view screen flickered to life again, and Captain Dawkins' face appeared. His expression was unreadable, carved from cold steel. There was no smugness in his tone, no gloating, only an eerie calm that somehow felt more menacing than outright rage. Admiral Dawkins said slowly, each syllable deliberate, cutting through the silence like a blade. Return to your superiors and deliver this message. Humanity is not to be tested. Norks felt his scales prickle as the human continued, voice dropping to a growl. We've shown restraint. We've given the galaxy chances for peace. But if any race threatens us, or those under our protection again, we will end them. Swiftly, completely, without mercy. Norks' stomach turned. This wasn't a warning, it was a promise. And then, without another word, the Terran ships disappeared into hyperspace. No demand for tribute. No calls for surrender. No drawn-out speeches about dominion or vengeance. One moment they were there, 5 sleek predators radiating power. The next, they were gone, vanishing as silently as they had arrived. The admiral sat frozen on his ruined bridge, staring at the empty expanse. His officers shifted uneasily around him, but none spoke. Even in victory, their faces were masks of fear. For centuries, the Federation had viewed the Terrans as harmless idealists, silver-tongued diplomats, content to talk and negotiate while others fought and bled. But Norks now understood the terrible truth. Humanity wasn't harmless. They weren't idealists. They were hunters, apex predators that had chosen peace not because they couldn't wage war, but because war for them was too easy. The Admiral's claws trembled as he keyed in coordinates for the nearest Federation outpost. His flagship was little more than a floating husk. Its hull breached in multiple places, life support systems failing. But that didn't matter anymore. The galaxy needed to hear this. It needed to know that the Terrans, those unassuming newcomers, with their talk of peace and cooperation, had teeth sharper than any predator the stars had ever known. And now those teeth were bared for all to see. Nova bomb and the echoes of annihilation. The silence that followed the blast was heavier than any sound Admiral Norks had ever heard. He stood frozen on the shattered bridge of his flagship claws, gripping the armrests so tightly that the metal groaned beneath them. His scales prickled with a heat that seemed to radiate from the very void outside, and though the battle was over, his heart pounded as if the enemy still lurked in the shadows. The Devourer fleet was gone, not damaged, not retreating, not even reduced to wreckage, gone. Erased so thoroughly that his sensors could detect no trace, no twisted debris, no radiation spikes, no energy signatures, just emptiness, a hollow void where death had passed and left nothing behind. Admiral? One of his officers spoke, her voice shaking so badly it was almost inaudible. They didn't destroy the fleet. They obliterated it. The entire sector is sterile, as if it never existed. Norks swallowed hard. He had heard whispers before, legends of a Terran weapon so powerful it could ignite stars and reduce systems to ash. The Nova bomb, they had called it. He had dismissed those stories as fear-mongering Terran propaganda to keep the lesser races obedient. But now, staring into the lifeless void, he knew those stories had been true all along. Across the galaxy, chaos erupted as word of the event spread. Encrypted transmissions carried shaky recordings of the attack to every corner of Federation space. On flickering holoscreens, the same image played on loop, a sleek Terran warship unleashing a missile that bloomed into a sphere of pure annihilation, followed by total darkness. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic rippled like a tsunami. Representatives of 100 species shouted over each other, their voices laced with terror. Some denounced the footage as fake. Others stared in horrified silence, knowing deep within their hearts that no species could fabricate such destruction. If the Terrans could do this to the Devourers, what chance did anyone have against them? Norks remained seated on his ruined bridge, his claws now trembling as he recalled Captain Dawkins's calm, cold voice. "We've shown restraint, but force our hand again and we will end you." Swiftly, entirely, without hesitation. There had been no arrogance in those words, no need for threats or boasting. Only the quiet, lethal certainty of a predator that had chosen for now not to hunt. The Terran ships had vanished into hyperspace as silently as they had appeared. No demands for submission, no speeches about victory. Just a single strike of overwhelming power, and then nothing. Humanity hadn't avoided war because they feared it. They had avoided war because for them, it would have been too easy. And now the galaxy understood if the Terrans ever chose to fight again, no one would be left to tell the tale. The Council trembles before the truth. Admiral Norks's flagship limped through hyperspace, its engines shrieking like a mortally wounded beast. The metal hull groaned under the strain of every jump, and the bridge was filled with the acrid smell of burnt circuits. Systems failed one by one, but Norks didn't care. None of it mattered anymore. He was alive only for one reason: to deliver the message. to tell the galaxy what he had seen with his own eyes. When he finally staggered into the Galactic Council chambers, every pair of eyes turned to him. Representatives of hundreds of races, scaled, feathered, furred, and skinned, watched in silence. The proud admiral of the Kirthai Empire now appeared as a ghost of his former self, his uniform scorched, torn, and stained with the blood of his crew. But his gaze burned with the weight of unimaginable horror. "You requested an emergency audience, Admiral," said Chancellor Voss of the Alari. Her voice smooth yet strained. Her slender fingers gripped the podium tighter than necessary. "Speak." Norx's claws scraped the surface of his own podium as he drew in a deep, ragged breath. His voice was low, almost hollow. "The Kirthai Armada is gone. Every ship, every soldier, erased from existence in seconds." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber, hushed whispers growing into murmurs. How demanded General Crux of the Vorak Empire, his booming voice echoing through the chamber. "The Devourers are unstoppable. What force could?" "It wasn't the Devourers," Norx interrupted sharply, his tone laced with both fear and awe. "It was the Terrans." That name sent a wave of murmuring across the hall. "They deployed a weapon." Norx's claws trembled visibly now. "A weapon I thought was myth." "The Nova Bomb." The room erupted. "Impossible!" roared Crux, slamming his fist onto the table so hard the sound reverberated like thunder. "No race possesses such power." "They do," Norx hissed, eyes wide. "I saw it. I watched as they fired one shot and wiped out thousands of Devourer warships in an instant. There wasn't even debris, just nothing." The shouting grew louder. Some representatives demanded proof. Others whispered frantic questions about Terran intentions. A few already spoke in hushed tones about preemptive strikes against Earth. "Enough." Chancellor Voss shouted, though her voice cracked with tension. Her gaze flickered nervously to the back of the chamber, where a single figure had risen from his seat. The Terran ambassador stepped forward. Tall and broad-shouldered, his movements were deliberate and unhurried, radiating an aura of controlled power. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room, silencing even the most vocal representatives. "You ask if the Nova Bomb is real?" he said, his voice deep and calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of menace. "You already know the answer." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. "We didn't come to conquer. But if you threaten us or those under our protection, we will respond." Without hesitation, without restraint. Norx felt his blood run cold. The monster wasn't just awake. It was watching. The revelation of humanity's true nature. The Galactic Council chamber was drowning in silence. Every representative seemed frozen, their eyes locked on the solitary figure standing in the center. The Terran ambassador didn't shout, didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone was like a coiled predator, ready to strike, calm, patient, yet radiating an aura of barely restrained power that pressed down on the room like gravity. "You want to know why we let you see us as weak?" he began, his deep voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel. "Why we spoke of peace and diplomacy, even when you mocked us, even when you dismissed us as idealists, unfit for survival in this galaxy." His gaze swept across the chamber, lingering on each representative, as if he could see into their very souls. Many of them averted their eyes, unable to meet that piercing, icy stare. "It was never because we lacked your strength," the ambassador said, his tone darkening. "It was never because we feared your fleets or your weapons. No, it was because we remember. We remember what happens when humanity embraces war." A ripple of unease ran through the chamber. The ambassador stepped forward, his polished boots clicking against the marble floor. Each step echoed ominously like the drumbeats of an approaching executioner. "We once fought wars among ourselves that scorched entire continents." He continued, his voice low and deliberate. "Our skies burned, red oceans turned black, and cities crumbled into ash. Weapons of unspeakable power turned billions into dust in mere moments. We mastered the art of destruction long before any of you even dreamed of reaching the stars." The ambassador paused, letting the words sink in like poison. "And we learned the truth. War is not a test of courage. It is not a noble proving ground. It is a sickness. A sickness we cured not because we forgot how to kill, but because victory became too easy, too meaningless, when there was nothing left to oppose us." He rested his hands on the podium, his fingers tightening with barely contained force. Muscles rippled under his sleeves, the coiled strength of a predator who could tear apart any threat in an instant. Admiral Norks's scales prickled as the realization sank deeper into his bones. He had seen Captain Dawkins's eyes on the battlefield, eyes devoid of fear, filled only with cold calculation. It wasn't arrogance. It was the chilling certainty of a species that had looked into the abyss of its own nature and decided to keep the monster chained. "For now, you've seen the Nova bomb," the ambassador said, his voice dropping lower, heavier. "That was only a fraction of our strength. If provoked again, we will not hesitate to unleash more. And when we do, it will not be war. It will be extinction." A shiver ran through the room. Even the fiercest warlords now sat silent, their bravado crumbling. The galaxy understood humanity's mercy was the only thing standing between survival and oblivion, the reshaping of galactic order. In the days that followed Admiral Norks's harrowing testimony, the Galactic Federation was no longer the same. The once thriving chambers of debate and bluster now felt like cold tombs where fear lingered in every shadow. The air was thick with tension, every representative weighed down by the memory of what had transpired. Humanity, once dismissed as idealists and pacifists, had become the unspoken center of every thought, every decision, every whispered strategy. The footage of the Nova bomb, replayed endlessly on encrypted holoscreens, the sleek Terran flagship, unleashing a streak of deadly light, the swelling sphere of annihilation engulfing thousands of Devour warships, and then silence. No wreckage, no survivors, just a void where stars once burned bright. In council meetings, voices that had once roared with arrogance now barely rose above whispers. The Vorak generals, famous for their ferocity and unyielding pride, sat rigid and pale, their claws drumming nervously against polished tables. The Aelari dignitaries, masters of manipulation and intrigue, refused to meet each other's eyes whenever humanity was mentioned. Even the create warlords, hardened veterans of centuries of conquest, now spoke only in hushed tones about the Terrans, as though the mere sound of the name might summon them. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy's balance of power shifted not through war, not through diplomacy, but through sheer, overwhelming terror. Humanity never asked for authority. They didn't need to. The other races gave it freely, desperate to avoid becoming the next cautionary tale. Trade agreements, military alliances, and territorial disputes were now filtered through Terran oversight. Not because humanity demanded it, but because every race feared what might happen if they acted without their approval. "They are not conquerors," Chancellor Voss murmured in a private council session, her voice as fragile as glass. "But they don't need to be. Their very existence is enough to keep us in line." Admiral Norks observed the transformation with a storm of emotions roiling in his chest. Relief, because for the first time in millennia, the galaxy had found unity. Dread, because he alone understood how fragile that unity truly was. The Terrans didn't desire power. That much was clear. But if they ever chose to wield it, there would be no drawn-out campaigns, no glorious last stands. There would only be silence. On the fringes of Federation space, a handful of rebellious voices began to stir. They whispered of resistance, of striking against humanity before it was too late. But those whispers inevitably died, choked by the memory of what had happened in the Devourer sector. The Terran fleets didn't need to patrol. They didn't need to threaten. Their absence was more terrifying than their presence, like a predator, unseen but always felt. "They are a blade," General Crux said grimly during a session. "A blade suspended above us all. And one day it might fall." No one dared to disagree. The galaxy had entered a new age, one forged not in conquest, but in the shadow of humanity's restrained wrath. Light and shadow intertwined. Years passed, but the memory of the Nova Bomb never faded. It lingered like a phantom in the minds of every species in the Galactic Federation, a haunting reminder of humanity's unmatched power. To the galaxy, humanity had become both a beacon of hope and a shadow of dread. For some, the Terrans were saviors. They rebuilt shattered colonies, their engineers working tirelessly to restore life where the Devourers had left only ash. Terran scientists shared technologies that had once seemed like magic curing plagues, purifying poisoned worlds, and lifting entire civilizations out of darkness. Their fleets patrolled lawless sectors, protecting merchant convoys from pirates and warlords. To these grateful species, humanity was a shield, a stalwart guardian standing between them and chaos. But to others, that same shield felt more like a cage. Admiral Norks had watched it unfold from the sidelines. He saw Terran warships drift silently through the void, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian, their movements precise and predatory. Even when idle, they radiated an unspoken threat, as though they were holding back an ocean of violence with nothing but willpower. The Nova Bomb had only been used once, but once was enough. It was never spoken of directly, yet it hung over every council session like a guillotine poised above a trembling neck. In private chambers, the debates grew heated. "Are they protectors or jailers?" whispered an Aelari diplomat, her luminous eyes darting nervously as though she feared a Terran might be listening. "They ended the bloodshed," said a Kurtii warlord with a hint of reverence in his gravelly voice. "They've given us peace for the first time in millennia." "At what price?" growled a Vorak general, his armored fingers digging grooves into the table. "Every decision we make now, every policy we pass, we ask ourselves, will this anger the Terrans? That is not peace. That is fear disguised as order." Yet none dared utter the word resistance. Norks recalled the words of the Terran ambassador spoken in the council chamber not long after the Devourer's annihilation. "We do not seek to rule. We do not crave dominion. But if you threaten us or those we protect, we will not hesitate. You've seen what happens when we are provoked. They weren't conquerors, they weren't tyrants, and yet they held the galaxy in the palm of their hand. Humanity was a paradox, light and shadow intertwined. They were the shield that guarded the weak and the sword that struck down the wicked. But they were also the predator in the dark, a force so vast and dangerous that even in their mercy, the stars seemed to shudder." As Norks stood at the viewport of his ship staring into the infinite expanse, he felt an unfamiliar mixture of hope and unease. Perhaps the galaxy needed such power to unite it, but if humanity's restraint ever faltered, there would be no tomorrow. The predator beneath the surface. Even in the quietest corners of the galaxy, fear of humanity pulsed like a living thing. The Devourers had been a terror that consumed systems, stars, and civilizations. But humanity had erased them with a single strike. Now that memory lingered in the minds of every species like a fresh scar. Admiral Norks could not shake the image of Terran warships drifting silently through space, their black hulls swallowing light, their forms sleek and menacing. They never seemed to move in haste. Instead, they glided with a patient, predatory precision, as though every maneuver was calculated, every movement restrained. He knew, as did the rest of the galaxy, that these ships could burn entire fleets in moments. Yet they did not, and that restraint made them all the more terrifying. In whispered conversations across Federation space, nervous questions surfaced. "They saved us from the Devourers." "Yes," murmured an Aelari delegate in a private meeting. "But at what cost? We call them protectors now. But isn't that just because we fear what they would do if we refused their protection?" A Vorak general, his scarred face set in grim lines, slammed a fist on the table. "They don't rule openly, but they don't have to. Every decision we make, Every word we speak is haunted by one thought. Will the Terrans approve? The chamber fell silent. No one dared to utter the word rebellion. Norks remembered Captain Dawkins' voice, calm and cold, as the void after the Nova bomb had burned the stars. We do not seek war, Admiral, but if we are forced into it, we will not hesitate. There will be no drawn-out campaigns, no survivors, only silence. That wasn't bravado, it was fact. The realization struck Norks like ice. Humanity didn't avoid war because they were weak. They avoided war because victory would come too swiftly, too absolutely, leaving nothing in its wake. Terran fleets never patrolled aggressively. They didn't enforce laws with heavy hands or demand tribute. They didn't need to. Their absence was more terrifying than their presence. They were hunters who could choose to strike at any time or simply let their prey tremble in anticipation. They aren't guardians, whispered a Kurth captain during a covert discussion with Norks. They're predators, watching, waiting, deciding if we're worth sparing. Norks said nothing. He knew the truth too well. Humanity was a paradox, saviors of the galaxy, and its greatest looming threat. They inspired gratitude and terror in equal measure. Their compassion was genuine, but so was their capacity for annihilation. As Norks stared into the cold void of space, he felt a chill seep into his bones. Perhaps only a predator could unite the galaxy. Perhaps this was the only peace possible. But deep inside, he couldn't silence one thought. What happens when the predator grows tired of restraint? The dawn of a new age. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Decades after the destruction of the Devourer's star systems, once fractured by hatred, now basked in uneasy peace. Commerce flowed along hyperspace lanes where once there had been only pirates and warlords. Scientific alliances blossomed between races who had spent centuries plotting each other's extinction. It was, by all appearances, a golden age, and at the center of it all stood humanity, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as silent sentinels. To many, the Terrans were saviors. They rebuilt shattered colonies, planting seeds of life on worlds left barren. Their ships patrolled the void, driving out raiders and enforcing order without ever firing a shot. They shared technologies that cleansed poisoned atmospheres, cured plagues, and stabilized dying suns. For billions across the stars, humanity was the light that banished the darkness. But to others, that light felt cold and sharp, less like a sun and more like the glint of a blade. In the Galactic Council, every discussion carried an undercurrent of fear. They are not rulers, whispered Chancellor Voss in a private meeting, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. Yet, we behave as though they are, not out of loyalty, but out of terror. No one dared argue. Every race remembered the Nova bomb. Its single use had rewritten the rules of galactic politics. Even now, the memory of that all-consuming flash of thousands of Devourer ships reduced to dust lingered like a nightmare that refused to fade. Admiral Norks knew the truth better than most. He had seen Dawkins' face on that day, calm, resolute, utterly devoid of hesitation. We do not seek war. Dawkins had said, his voice as steady as a star's pulse. But if you threaten what we protect, we will end you. Swiftly. Absolutely. Without hesitation, without regret. Those words echoed in Norks's mind like a prophecy. In the years since no race had dared challenge humanity, whispers of rebellion sometimes surfaced, but were quickly silenced not by Terran fleets, but by the raw memory of what those fleets could do. Humanity did not enforce peace through domination. They didn't need to. Their restraint was more terrifying than any weapon. As Norks watched his grandchildren play on the rebuilt Kurthi homeworld, he felt a fragile sense of hope. Perhaps the galaxy had been saved. Perhaps only a species like humanity, strong enough to destroy, wise enough to choose restraint, could guide them into a brighter future. But deep down, a chill coiled in his heart. He couldn't silence one haunting thought. What happens when the predator decides it no longer wishes to watch? What happens when it hunts again? In the void beyond the stars themselves seem to shudder.